This is the downtown of Manchester, Elm Street. And I've been saying for years, when I travel around the world, you know, most places that want to be tourist destinations, or even some that don't, they take their downtown and they eliminate cars and they turn it into a pedestrian walkway. Some of them put in trolleys or buses. Where was I recently? Well, it's not a pedestrian, but what it allows you to do is it allows you to bring in a specific, oh, I know what this is. This is the, I forget the name of this day in Manchester, but it's, they have all the different restaurants putting food out here. Now, Manchester's a fairly old city. But it's always been an industrial city with the mill buildings, not a real rich city. But the location is the best thing for this city, where it's located. It's right in the center of New England if you look at a map. So for businesses that want to set up distribution or access to the entire New England area, plus it's close to Boston, Montreal, fairly close if you want to get to those places, and it's more economical as far as the cost compared to Massachusetts, which is only 30 miles away. So, but if you eliminated cars, right, turn this into a pedestrian area, there'd be a lot of benefits to that. But it's not the biggest thing going wrong with this town at this point. Lots of restaurants and bars on the main drag. And they used to have tables outside, but now it looks like what they're doing is they're having people either go into the restaurant or the lines are right at the door. And it's crazy because you can see what's going on. It's right like that. Insane. This one, because they're handing out booze, it looks like. Look at this line. It starts right here, and then there's one line going into that place, and then the other part of the line wraps around and comes back. Now, the stuff that they're handing out for free, it's worth like $1, and people are willing to stand in line for $1. This line is a lot shorter than the other lines. And these people, I think, make grilled cheese. So these guys are standing in line for a free grilled cheese. It's probably not even a grilled cheese. It's probably like a snack-sized grilled cheese, and they're standing in line for it. Office for rent. Some very nice buildings here. I don't know how the inside is. That's one of the Irish pubs. There used to be another Irish pub over here. I don't know if it's still in business, but that one's been here forever. But even though this city has, now this used to be the music store, they're gone. There's been some restaurant that was supposed to go in there that never came. But what I was going to say is, New Hampshire does not have a sales or an income tax, but they do have a 9.5% meals and room tax. So if you rent a room or you go out to dinner, then you pay 9.5%, which is a bit pricey. You order a beer, you order a sandwich, go to McDonald's, rent a car, stay at a hotel, buy an ice cream cone that get a cup of coffee, you'll pay 9.5%. This is one of the places I like to eat, Consuelos. This is authentic Mexican food. Mexican, not Tex-Mex. They make a great burrito. And I think they're giving out something like the size of the palm of your hand. And even people come down this side street, yeah, right next to the courthouse in town. Crazy, right next to it. Yeah, tattoo places. There's about 10 of them in town now. When I first moved up here, there were none. They were banned, outlawed. But it's the stupidest thing. They have them come right across the street, so you can see people have to try to figure out how to get through the line. Yeah, in the 1800s, these were all textile mills. Got their power from the river, transportation, everything was on the river. That actually still manufactures wire over there, I believe. The lofts. Oh, I didn't know these were residential now. Interesting. That's the downtown of Manchester across the river. I am now on the west side of Manchester after crossing the river. And I almost bought a house on this side of the river, and thankfully I didn't. In the last 10 years, this part of the city is, I mean, it was never good, but it's really gone downhill. That's one of the hospitals in town. There's 2 hospitals. Well, technically there's 3 locations now, but 2 of them are owned by the Elliott. That's CMC, Catholic Medical Center. And in the old days, that used to be run by the church, Catholic Church. Yeah, there used to be a supermarket there, and it looks like it's out of business now. And lots of churches in Manchester. There's another one over here as well. It's a very nice building. They do a nice job keeping it up. And it must be residential only. I mean, rental only for the residential. I don't think they sell condos here. But I could be mistaken. Because the company that runs it, they're the big property owner in town. They own lots of properties. Yeah, hospital's a big business. They're all these bigger hospitals are going for these different qualifications, so now they all have to be heart specialists and this specialist. So people don't have to go down to Boston now. They can come to Manchester, New Hampshire, or Concord, or some of the other surrounding areas. This is West High School. It's a playing field. We've got lacrosse on one side and soccer on another. And it looks like you can come in and use the track if you want, because the gates are open. Interesting. Right on the other side of the highway is the river, and then you go over to the east half of the city. Yeah, a lot of police activity tonight. Interesting. That was a Cumberland Farms, and it went out of business when I moved up here. It's, you know, horrible location. And now these are very popular up here now. These smoking places that sells I don't even know what they're called, vaporizers, e-cigarettes, and I'm looking at it, they sell juices. So I don't know if they're trying to say that they're a healthy store that smells smoking products. That's hilarious. And now the Cumberland Farm is right here now, or it used to be. Well, it's now Gulf. Interesting. You'd think it was a better location, but people on that side of the street can't come across easily. So that's when you know. When you're a gas station, you want to have, and you're at an intersection, you want everybody to be able to come into you. Wow, $2.77 for gas now. I paid $2.53 last week. If you folks have ever heard of Dean Kamen, he owns all these mill buildings right here. He's done a wonderful job. These were dilapidated when I moved up here, a lot of them. They're now completely renovated and filled to the brim with tech companies or medical. Dean Kamen, he moved up here from New York, I believe, and he started a company, the company that you ride on those wheels. They were very popular for a while. And then he sold that, and now he has a medical device company. He's really big into robotics. He's a very innovative guy. A lot of engineering power behind him, so he comes up with the innovations and then uses his team to develop these things. People may have seen him on 60, I think he was on 60 Minutes, and he's the one who was doing the robotic hands for the vets coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan who had their limbs blown off. He was making artificial limbs. I think he still is. But this is where his base is. And And I think there's several thousand people who work right over there as a result. And southern New Hampshire, that's a very, very popular school now. You go anywhere in the country now and you'll see that advertised for online education. This mill building is owned by, he was the strongest, quote unquote, strongest man in the world for a second 20, 30 years ago. I know he had records in either the bench or the squat. Yep, 24/7. These places are also very popular now. These are these fit classes, I forget what they call them, where you go in and you do powerlifting, deadlifts, pull-ups, calisthenics, jumping, ropes, kettlebells. I forget the term for it, but I'll walk by here sometimes and I'll see like 40 people hanging on those bars. CrossFit. Good use of an old building. Figure don't need to have grade A space for CrossFit, since all you're doing is sweating. Okay, we're starting to get into the neighborhood area that I was talking about before. To make this city a really nice city, you'd have to raise probably 85% of the buildings in the city. Well, maybe this was a crack house. It's the big red X-ray. Oh, Manchester Fire Department. Well, that might be different. The multifamilies had to install some expensive alarm and sprinkler systems, if I remember correctly, if you own a multifamily. Otherwise, they'd shut you down. Okay, well, this is new. This is Douglas Road right there. And they now have this bike path along the river. Interesting. I think there's a camp over here. It's where the homeless hang out or live. Okay, so this is close to the neighborhood where I was going to buy. I was originally looking for a multifamily. Now these, even back then, were out of my price range what I wanted to pay, and I also didn't want, ideally I was looking for a two-family. Yeah, the prices on multifamilies back then were very high for what you'd get. They were being driven up. I think I explained this before, where that building would go for $400,000 or $500,000, and if you calculate the rent, it really didn't cover the cost on what you get for the rents. Back then, I think the rents were only like $700-800 for an apartment, maybe $900. They're higher now. In addition, a lot of these apartments, they're owned by, if you go around town, you'll see that they're managed by some of the same people, owned and managed. And once you have a few properties, it's a lot easier to buy the next one. The first couple are the hardest ones, till you get a positive cash flow. And if you're not buying at a right price, you're not going to get a positive cash flow. And this side of Manchester, the west side, a lot of it looks like this. And this is how Dorchester looks, and a lot of cities. But occasionally you do get some cottages, and that could still be a two-family. See how there's doors on both sides? And there's another entrance in the back. That's definitely a two-family. This one looks like a single family. So the zoning in Manchester, if you grease the right palms, you can get zoning changed pretty easily. It happens all the time still. Where I eventually bought my house, the lot across the street was not zoned because it only had, I think it was 60 feet of frontage on the road, and they wanted to divide the lot and put 2 homes there. One with the existing home, and then put this gigantic home right next to the older home. And it was opposed, and technically I'm not in a butter because I'm across the street. So I wasn't allowed to vote because they didn't consider me in a butter. And the people who bought the house eventually are very nice people, but the fact that there's this 3-story home right across the street in a residential neighborhood, it just made no sense at all. None. But the realtor who bought the house, what he did was he sold the house, he flipped it, sold the house, and with the understanding that he was going to get a variance and put on a second house. That was part of the agreement. And he ended up selling the house for more than he paid. So that second lot that he built was all profit and over his costs. And he was a long-time realtor in town. He knew the right people. And he ended up getting a variance. If I went for that variance, it would have been shot down, because the guy was originally turned down for his variance, and then it was approved. There's 4 cop cars right here. This happens all the time on the West End now. Now this is the street next to, here comes another one. This is the street next to the street where I would have bought a home. And so a lot of private unmarked cars, and now they have these vans, almost like a SUV size, driving around town. Not that type of SUV, but something like this size. They look like that, except they say, you know, the police on it. And I'm not going to go down there. More of them. 2 more cops. There's about 10 cops there now. Must be drug related, because the unmarked cars. Look at that tree. That's actually on the lot of the house that I made an offer on. That gray house right there. I'll get a closer look in a minute. This is the street. The street actually doesn't look that bad compared to what it looked like before. This doesn't look as congested as those other streets nearby with all those 3 families. Well, whoever owns it now doesn't take very good care of it. You can see all the paint. That roof looks like it's in tough shape up there. Looks real bad. Garage. I liked it because it had this little side lot, so you're not right on top of your neighbor. So there's a little bit of a lawn, not a huge lawn. Having a huge lawn just means more work, more maintenance, more time. Wow, definitely needs a paint job. That deck in the back looks like it's pretty tough. Now this was about 2003, 2002, 2003, 2004, somewhere in there, where I made an offer on that house. And it was rejected. I think I offered $259 and they wanted $279. I could be mistaken, but that's what I recollect. This area just started having all sorts of drug and violence. I mean, people getting mugged, people getting shot, people getting knifed. And I'm glad I'm not here. I didn't want to deal with that crap. This is how Dorchester was, which is a section of Boston when we lived there. And when I first moved up here, I was out to dinner with my parents, and I said to them, I said, does this place remind you of Dorchester? And they both nodded their head and said, yep. And I said to them, I said, well, we know how that's going. So I knew it was a matter of time before this place would just go down the tubes. And it's going that same path. Everybody has to have their dish, their antennas. Going to the poorest neighborhoods, you'll still find those. Absolutely. See, they all have them. If you're poor, that's the first thing should go, is dish. Should be the first thing you give up. There's a 6 family right there. And I forget what the maximum is before it becomes a commercial building. I want to say it goes up to 6 or 8. And then after that, the laws and the insurance rates change accordingly. But that could have changed, because it's been a long time since I've looked at this stuff. You can have a management company manage this stuff, and they take, some of them take 10, some of them take 15% of your rents for managing the property. And I've met people around the world who travel like I do, and they own property around the world and they have it managed for them. And I'm like, talking to them about it, I'm like, I never felt that comfortable being an absentee landlord. And they said, if you have good people managing it, then it's not a problem. Well, there's the rub, right? They're good until they're not. And then you've got to fly in from wherever you are to take care of any problems. If a lot of times you won't even know there's a problem until the fit hits the fan, or the fit hits the shan. Chez Vachon. Yeah, this is not, I hate this type of neighbor. I don't mind walking through it. I hate living in this type of environment. I've lived in these neighborhoods, and I think they're horrible. They're horrible. You always have to really be on your guard. You're never at ease or at rest in these places. You really got to pay attention to who exactly is. See, they're all, you notice how they all look at the camera? Because a lot of the people who live there, they're convicts, ex-cons, and they probably have warrants on them, or they're worried about getting arrested again, or you know, the other thing is it's a big drug area now. A lot of drugs come through here, and so they see a camera and they're like, holy. Yeah, see, there's another managed building right there for rent. 622-5019, area code 603. Call and get that apartment if you want to live in this neighborhood. I'd rather live in my car and move to a better area. Now that is what a lot of these homes are, is asbestos shingles. And when you see vinyl or aluminum siding, those are 99% chance those are covering up asbestos. Because at least up here, if you get a cracked shingle or you want to replace that, it's quite expensive endeavor. So it's cheaper just to cover it rather than try to remove it, because you have to bring in like hazmat teams. I'm not kidding, you have to bring in like this giant plastic bag over your house to keep everything from blowing around, giving everybody cancer. So people look at the cost of doing that and they're like, forget that. All right. See, so now this would be a commercial building. That could be 20 units or 12 units or 50, you know, probably not 50. Just a giant, ugly piece of garbage. But it's probably making somebody money. Look at these goofballs. Yeah, it's people do whatever they want in these neighborhoods, because you won't find the police unless they're responding like they were. And you noticed there were 15 police cars who showed up. Well, there's 15 police cars showing up because, well, that tells you everything you need to know. They show up in force for a reason. Granite State Solar Company, interesting. Dubuque. Now, this city used to be broken into two. The Frenchies used to live on the west side. That's why that Catholic Medical Center is there. Now, that's not as much the case today, but 50, 100 years ago, probably French was the spoken language over here, not English. And wherever you see a laundromat, you're going to find that you're in an area, high density area. A lot of people in a small area, and most of them probably don't own, they rent. And they probably used to be they're too poor to own appliances, and now they just don't have the space. At Fritzy's Variety, who accepts EBT. You need to in this neighborhood. Look at that behemoth monstrosity. Yeah, these are some of the worst areas in Manchester. And oh, look. Yeah, I was going to come last night when I was on that other walk, but this camera doesn't shoot too well at night.
They recorded?
Yeah, of course. Why not? I can't tell you what I'm doing. Yeah, I came down here at night one time, and yeah, you'd be very, very fortunate if nothing goes wrong.